programs, objectives, eligibility criteria for the federal funding, employment of the training programs by target population, training adjustment assistance for the TA, NFAAT, the traditional adjustment labor. The objective to provide a retaining job search in for the location association that the work adversely affected with the increase imports in order to facilitate the return of the workforce and sustainable employment. The eligibility criteria, the TAA beneficiary, one member of the work group we have been found of the Labor Department to be adversely affected with the increased imports directly, indirectly, but shifted production, therefore certified to apply the trading adjustment assistance to meet the following individual requirements. His or her total partial separation must have begun after the data specified with the certification as beginning the adverse import impact being his or her total partial separation must begin before the expiration of the 2-year period being the date of the secretary issued by the certification before the termination of the date if specified in certification. The workers' investment activities workers' investment in dislocated workers. To provide worker investment and increase the employment, retention, earnings, the participation, occupation, skill, and attainment, the participants of the AZM employ the workers, improve the quality of the workforce, enhance the productivity of the nation, and programs designated increase the employability. Employment is measured by the entry of the unsubsidized employment, retention of the unsubsidized employment of 6 months after the entry of the employment, the extent of the recovery of the prior wages level, for cross-cutting the goals of the program intends to enhance the customer satisfaction and participation with the employer. The employment goals will be measured using the unemployment insurance wage records, and the customer satisfaction goals measured by the sampling. Individuals eligible for the assistant workers that have lost their job as a result of the plant closing or mass off-lays that are unlikely to return for the previous industrial occupation. For self-employed individuals, displaced homemakers who have been dependent on income and another family member no longer supported by any national emergency grant program. The identical eligibility also includes certain military personnel, individual defensive employment services, targeted individuals affect mass layoffs, natural disaster, federal government agencies, other circumstances specified by the Secretary, migrant, seasonal farm workers. The discretionary grant of the program under the Section 1312 of the Rehabilitation Act is authorized provided the vocational rehabilitation services migratory agricultural seasonal farm workers with disabilities, including maintenance of transportation for individual disability members of their families, whether or not such family members are disabled. The migratory agricultural seasonal farm worker, the disabilities of their family members. The program, the migrant seasonal farm workers, laborers, national farm worker job work laborers is under Section 167 of the Enforcement and assist of the migrant and other seasonal farm workers of their family may be achieved the economical state sufficiently addressing the employment-related needs for the uprising the beyond the farm worker. The National Farm Workers Job Program provides basic education, job skill training, the supportive services to prepare for the better paying of the job for the 1 year around for the preferring the state into the agricultural labor. The NFAGP provides the support of the servicing enable team workers to continue with the participation in agricultural labor market. Being available for the hire of the farmers when the farmers needed their labor. The ineligible seasonal farm worker is a disadvantaged person who is 12 consecutive months and 24 months prior to the application for the program has primarily employed with the agricultural labor with the characterized by the chronic unemployment or underemployment. An eligible migrant farm worker is a seasonal farm worker whose agricultural labor requires to travel off the job site, such as a farm worker is unable to return to the permanent place of residence within the same day. Dependents of eligible seasonal and migrant farm workers are also available. Native American Indian, the American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation, American Indian Vocational Services provides vocational rehabilitation services. American Indian disabilities who reside in near federal and state reservations, consistent with their individual strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, interests, and informed choices so that they may prepare for and engage in gainful activity. The American Indians disabilities residing on near federal or state reservation, including Native Alaskans who meet the definition of an individual with disability, individual with a significant disability, respectively found in Section 1722, 20A, and 21A of the Rehabilitation Act. The Indian Employment Assistance provide vocational training employment opportunities for the eligible Indian Americans through federal dependency. Members of the federal recognized Indian who are unemployed under an unemployed need in training obtaining responsible satisfaction employment. Please information on the beneficiary and eligibility found in 25 CFR Part 266 and 267. Indian job placement under the United States Sioux Tribes 6 Sioux Tribes Development Corporation to provide the jobs development, counseling, social administration, guidance of referrals to job training programs, other assistance programs of the United States Sioux Tribes Development Corporation located in Peoria, South Dakota. Most of the American Indian member of the federal recognized Indian tribe will reside near the Indian reservation under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Those eligible requirements are specified in the contract between the United States Tribal Development Corporation of the Bureau of the Indian Affairs. The Indian Vocational Training of the United States Tribal Technical College Interior that provided the vocational training for the individual Americans through the United Tribes of the Technical College located in Bismarck, North Dakota. American Indians who are members of the federal recognized Indian and tribe reside on near individual reservations under the jurisdiction of Bureau of Indian Affairs. Those eligible requirements specified in the contract between the United States Technical College and Bureaus of Indian Affairs. More Native American employment for the training program laborers to support comprehensive employment of the training activities of Indian, Alaskan Native American, Native Hawaiian individuals who develop fully their academic occupational literacy to make them more competitive with the workforce to promote economic social development. Indian, Alaskan Native Hawaiian communities according to the goals, values such communities to help them achieve personal economic sufficient to principal means of the accomplishing these purposes and enable the Tribes Native American organization to provide employment with the training services of Native American people for the community service should provide the cultural appropriate manner consistent with the primary principles of Indian self-determination. A person eligible to receive the service under the INA program if the person of the Indian determined the policy of Native American with the granting definition including any one of the major federal recognized of the Alaska Natives as defined in Section 3 of the Alaska Native Claims, the Section Settlement Act of ANCSA 43 U.S. Standard Code 1602B. The Native Hawaiian is defined in WIA Section 116B 30. The person must be any one of the following: the unemployed, underemployed, defined in 668 150. The low-income individuals defined in Work Enforcement Act. Work Investment Act, Section 101, 250, or other recipient of the bona fide vital laid off who's needed to retain the security of the retain of the employment individual who's needed employment with the training service obtaining the reemployment that allows the self-sufficiency. Native American vocational technical education program to take the grants entering the contract of the federal recognized Indian Tribes Tribal Organization American Native entities eligible Bureau funded schools that do not propose the award to support the secondary vocational technical education federal recognized Indian tribes. They organize Alaska Natives entitled the eligible federal Bureau funded schools that do not propose the use of the award to support secondary vocational technical education. Old workers, senior community service employment to provide the foster, promote the part-time opportunities, usually 20 hours per week in a community service activities. Unemployed with low-income person who are 55 years of age and older. The extent of the feasible of the program assists promotes the transition of the program. The enrolls the unsubsidized employment in addition with the SSC and the senior community service. The SCSEP coordinates with the Department of Labor to provide the training at adults 55 years and older. The family income below the 125% of the DHHS poverty level. Prospective participation must certify the information relative to the age, personal financial status, which is needed to determine whether the individual economical disadvantage and program eligibility. Person with physical or mental disabilities. Projects within the industry. The purpose of the program is to create the expanded job career opportunities for the disability and competitive labor market and engaging the talent leadership of the private industry as partnerships in the Rehabilitation Act to develop the competitive job careers and skills needed to perform such jobs to create the particular job career readiness training programs and to provide the job placement and career advancement. Individual is eligible to serve as under the program if the individual has a disability of significant disability under the Section 720A, the 721A of the Rehabilitation Act. The individual requires vocational services to prepare for secure, retain, regain employment, determine the eligibility consistent with the Section 102 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as amended. Program Department State-supported educational service program. State-supported employment services program provides a grants the system of the state, the development, implementing collaborative, appropriate, and supported employment services for individual most significant disabilities to enable such individuals to achieve the employment outcome that supported employment in the state and provided with the state service under this employment to individual if the individual has been determined in the vocational rehabilitation in accordance with the criteria in Section 102 of the Rehabilitation Act. The individual has been determined determined to be an individual with the most significant disability supported employment has been identified with the appropriate employment outcome for the individual, the basis of the comprehensive assessment of the rehabilitation, including the evaluation of the rehabilitation and the job needs. The State Vocational Educational Rehabilitation Services, State Vocational Rehabilitation and Services Program provides a grant to assist the states with operating statewide comprehensive coordinated effective deficiency accounting programs, each of which is the integral state workforce investment systems is designed to assess the development of a provided vocational rehabilitation service for individual with disability consistent with their strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, and capabilities, interests, and informed choices, and so they may prepare for and engage the gainful activity. Gainful employment. The eligible criteria of the determination of the applicant's eligibility of vocational rehabilitation services is based on the following requirements. The determination of qualified person for the applicant has a physical or mental impairment. Determined the qualified personnel for the applicant physical or mental impairment constitutes a result substantial impediment of the employment of the application's determination of qualified vocational rehabilitation counselor employed with the designated state until the application requires the vocational rehabilitation service to provide that for serve prepare for source or retain for the gaining of employment and consistent with the application's unique strength of resources, the priorities, concerns, the abilities, capabilities, interests, informed choices, the presumption in accordance with the Section 102.2A2 of the Rehabilitation Act. The application can benefit in the terms of the employment outcome of the provision of the vocational rehabilitation services. Refugees entrant assistance targeted to provide funding of the employment related to other social service to refugees, assistance of Americans victims of serve in the form of the trafficking certification of Office of the Refuge Reinstatement and Resettlement. The entrance in the area of the high refugees concentrated for the high welfare utilization of the funding, assisting with the refugees experience with difficulty in making the transition to employment who have lost their jobs of the requiring employment services and admitted to the United States for at least 5 years. The refugees under Section 207 of the Immigration National Act, they granted the asylum under the Section 208 of the Act of the Cuban Hawaiian Entrance as defined in Section 501 of the 8th Refuge and Education Assistance and certain Emerson from Vietnam accompanying with the family matters defined in Section 584 of the Foreign Relations Export Financing Related Programs Appropriation Act of 1988, also including the victims of the serving the trafficking, is defined in Section 107B1 of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2002. Refugee Entrant Assistant Voluntary Agency Program. On the matching grant program funding of the consistent Congress since 1979, the alternative approach to the state administrative resettlement of the program goals of the refugees detained self-sufficient within the 4 months of their arrival within the access to the cash assistance participation agency of the official refuge resettlement of the ORR grant, which cashes in kind of the and cash in kind contribution 20% of their matches must be in cash. Since mid 1999, the ORR has matched each dollar of the agency contribution cash in the kind of services with $2 of the ORR funds. The maximum federal contribution is $22,000 per refugee. The matching grant program is characterized as strong emphasis only earlier department intensive services first of the 4 months after arrival. ORR requires the participation agency to provide maintenance of the federal food and housing in case of the management and employment services in housing. Additional services such as language training of the medical assistants may be provided in housing arranged through referral of the other programs. Refugees and the matching grant program that using public funded medical assistance eligibility requirements of the refugees. The term refugees is used to apply to the refugees asylees, American Seas, Asians, immigrants of Vietnam, certified victims of the trafficking, Cuban and Haitian entrances will be determined eligible for the grantee agencies as verified by the Human Services Monitoring. Food stamps, employment and student employment training in the program. The program goals of the help job-ready food, the stamps, recipients for the find work, they assist to gain skills, training, and experience that lead to their employment. All non-accepted the food stamps of the recipient subject of the food stamp program requirements, including participation in food stamp employment training program designed for the state agencies. Example for the person younger than 16 or 60 years old, personnel physically, mental, unable to work, those responsible for the care of the child under 6 is of an incapacitated individual student recipient of assistance under the Section 4 of the Social Security Act of the Temporary Assistance for the Needy Families, TNFA, the employment compensation employed with independent participation in drug, alcohol, treatment program specifically targeted and able-bodied adults with the dependence of the ABAWDS subjects to the food stamp program participation limited unless they are employed at participation qualification, education, training, activities at least 20 hours a week. Participation in workfare. The ABAWDS are limited to the receiving food stamps for 3 months in the 36-month period. Tribal work grants for Native employment works is a new HHS to allow eligible Indian tribes and Alaska Native organizations to operate a program, make a work activities available. The new program serves an underemployed individuals. New program grantees determine specific eligibility requirements for their new program. Disabled Veterans Outreach Program develop jobs and job training opportunities. Disabled other veterans to contact the employers, promote the development on job training for the apprenticeship other than job training within the federal job training with the VWIP and HYRP and VA programs. Provided outreach for the veterans. All community agencies, organization provide assistance, community-based groups, and organization appropriate grantees under the federal funded employment and training of the program. Developing any linkages agency to promote maximum employment opportunities. Veterans to provide employment development and vocational guidance to the approach to services wherever applicable. The VAOP services as veterans, however, the Section 4013A provides a certain order of the prior among targeted groups of veteran services. DAVLP specialists indicate special consideration will be given to educational and economically disadvantaged veterans. PL 10 Public Law 101-510 is also provided to the individuals receiving disability discharge, medically retired from the military, provided with the transition assistance under the Disabled Veterans Transition Association or Homeless Veterans and Reintegration Program. Labor to provide the funds to demonstrate the programs to expedite the reintegration of the program to veterans and the labor force. Individuals who are homeless veterans, the homeless individuals who lack the fixed, regular, adequate right time. Nighttime residency as an individual whose primary nighttime residency is supervised in publicly privately operated shelters designated to provide the living accommodations, welfare, hotels, shelters, transitional housing, and the mentally ill, and institution that provides a temporary institutionalized public and private place to non-designated ordinarily use a regular sleeping accommodation for the human beings. The reference to the Title 40 U.S. Standard Code 1302. The veteran is an individual who served in the active military, naval, air force, who is discharged and released into he's under the condition of dishonorable. Local veterans employment representative program to provide job placement and support services directly to the veterans. Ensure that there is local supervision in the state employment agencies compliant with the federal regulations, performance standards of the grant agreement provisions, and carrying out the requirements of Title 38 U.S. Standard Code 401. For them providing veterans the maximum employment the training opportunities. Although the veterans are intended to be the beneficiaries of the LVREC as a CFDA, Congress has authorized otherwise defined eligible for the person in Title 38 U.S. Standard Code 40155 as an authorized in the Public Law 101-510 of the LVER, separating the services as members of their spouse of the transition to civil labor forces. When the members are still on active duty, not technically considered a veteran yet, but they are local employment offices. They have such services delivery point to the LVR concentrates the facility. Those veterans are eligible for the persons who identify with the sum of the barrier between them and their employment training related objectives. These individuals are targeted populations. The LVR services may be included disabled veterans, homeless veterans with combat experience with wartime campaigns, expeditionary medals, recipients, economically educational disadvantaged veterans in need of training or retraining and become marketable in the local labor market, veterans in need of the state license or certification to practice and work in their chosen trained field. The Veterans Work Enforcement Investment Program to support employment, the training programs throughout the grants of the contract to meet the needs of the assistance for the certain veterans. Recently separated veteran services and connected disabled veteran campaign for conflicting veterans who have significantly barriers employments, although above the all eligible unless they are dishonorably discharged. Vocational rehabilitation disabled veterans to provide all services assistance to the enabled veteran services and connected disability veterans that they obtain the suitable employment with the severity of the disability does not permit the employment to be an option for the program can provide the needed services assistance to develop the individual learning skills skills to achieve the maximum independence of daily living. Veterans warfare-related services and service and connected disabilities related 20% of the compensation certain service disabled service persons depending on the discharge or release of the service. If the VA determines the service person is unlikely to receive at least 20% of the rating that they need the vocational rehabilitation because of the employment handicap, veterans compensate the ratings of 10% may also be eligible for the found and to have serious employment handicap. The youth grants the state for incarcerated youth offenders to assist incarcerated youth offenders obtaining post-secondary education, post-secondary vocational training, measured objective lower rate, recidivism, academic achievement, job placement, and job retention. Individuals incarcerated in state prison, including pre-release facilities and alternative programs such as a boot camp, are eligible to release of the parole within 5 years or 25 years of age if the younger have obtained a secondary school diploma as an equivalent. Job Corps labor. The Job Corps is a national, large, and residential educational employment training program that economically trained for the age of 16 to 24 with the face of multiple barriers. Employment. The objective of the program to provide the integrated manner of the comprehensive array of services such as academic, vocational, life skills, and the awarded basic learning in order to provide the skill necessary for the long-term attachment for the labor market. The youth who enter the Job Corps program with the high school equivalency and or the training with the opportunity to receive both. Additionally, with June 2001, the Job Corps established attainment of the high school diplomas and national priority during the PY01. 90% of all the graduates and 75% of the terminees entered the employment and enrolled in the further education and entered into the military. Job Corps is designed to the out school of the youth that usually drop out prior to the graduation age of 16 to 24. Legal residents or lawful admitted permanent residents authorized to work in the United States. The targeted population low income, meeting those public assistance, foster disability, homeless, earning the individual poverty. Minor students have been signed parental guidance consent. The additional enrollees must be free of behavioral problems that would prohibit self others from benefiting from their program that they may currently engage in life and illegal drug use. Parents with independent children must have a child care plan. Opportunities for youth build programs. The youth build programs provide assistance with a wide range of multiple disciplinary activities, services, assistance with economical disadvantaged youth. The opportunities are disadvantaged youth adults who have been dropped out of the high school to obtain the education, employment skills necessary to achieve the economic sufficient development, leadership skills, and attainment. Commitment and community development in lower to very low income communities. Any other object of the youth builder is expanded supply of the permanent affordable housing and the homeless person, members of low income, very low income families, disadvantaged youth, adults. Participation in the program meaningful. The site training of the experience, construction, rehabilitation, help as community services. They are helping to meet the homes of the housing of the need of homeless and low income families in their community. Disadvantage of the risk of very low income adults at the age of 16 to 24 who have dropped out of the high school and are eligible for the program. Emphasizes special outreach of the undertaking the recruitable eligible young women, and program permits the acceptable the young adults who do not meet the income, the educational requirements who have the educational needs despite the attainment of the high school diploma equivalent. Exceptions for the individual of the category cannot exceed 25% of the all participations. There's a couple more grants, but I'm gonna get out of here. Let's read the HB1 service grant. HB1 technical service training grants are enhanced by the user fee paid to the employers of bringing foreign workers into the United States on a temporary basis of the high school of the specialty occupations. As is part of the HB1 non-immigration visa portable visa program, the Department of Labor Technical Skills Training and the Technical Training Program will establish an American Competitiveness Work Improvement Act of 1998, academic American apprenticeship, American Competitiveness and Training 20th Century Act of 2002. The companion in legislation, the grants are along as a long-term solution to domestic skill shortage and higher the skills high technology occupation. Rising in the technical skill levels of American workers, they can have an advantage new technically related high skills employment opportunities that will in turn the help of the business reduce the dependence to skilled foreign and the professional permitted to work in the United States on the temporary basis under the HB1 visa law. The HB1 technical skill grants are focused directly under the addressing the high school technology shortage of the American business, as they are intended to address the labor of the shortage due to the reason of the other technical skill shortages. Technical skills training grants are granted toward employed or unemployed workers who can be trained in the place directly high skilled the HB1 occupations, the highest echelons of the HB1 career ladder. Candidates and training funding of the HB1 technical skills training grants should be proposed and identified with the appropriate assessment tools and the high level of general education background. In addition, with the prerequisite for the occupational training being proposed, the target individual should possess certain characteristics such as drive, initiative, and help and guarantee successful completion of the high school level training. The high skill level training of the HB1 grants. Employees of the HB1 grant skills are generally categorized as having a bachelor's degree or comparable with work experience. Um, and there's a couple more, but I'm going to stop the video.